Welcome back to Homework Help with Miss Gore. Today we're going to be talking about our Unit 10, Day 2 homework, and we are going to be talking about forms of quadratics and graphing our quadratics. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take our standard form of a quadratic and we want to write this in root form. So I'm going to try to factor this into two binomials, x being my variable. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to -8, but add to positive 2. So my two numbers there, I'm going to have a +4 and a -2. Okay, so that's my factored form. Now for my vertex form. Remember we need to complete the square. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my 8 to the other side, and I'm going to include my blanks when I'm completing my square. So I'm going to create a perfect square trinomial by cutting my b value in half, then taking it and squaring it and adding that to both sides. I now have y plus 9 on the left equals x plus 1 in parentheses squared. I'm going to move my 9 to the other side, and I now have y equals x plus 1 squared minus 9. So now we're going to use the same exact function, and we're going to graph it. So we're going to use our graphing calculator. Okay, so you're going to take a few moments. You're going to type that in there. And I do actually want to include a couple of other values that are not in the table. So I do actually want to include a -5 value here. So I've got -5, 7, -4, 0, -3, -5, -2, -8, -1, -9, 0, -8, 1, -5, 2, 0, and 3, 7. Now the reason I want to include those other two values that aren't on the table there is because I want to have a nice picture of this parabola. So when I graph this, right, I kind of know where the shape goes. If I only have this go to the axis, I don't exactly know the behavior above it. So I've got -3, whoopsies, 1, 2, 3, 4, -5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8. There we go. Now we're seeing the pattern here. We got the pattern. All right. So now let's graph this. Okay, remember we try as hard as we can to try to make this a nice smooth curve, making sure you have arrows on the end there. Arrows on the end there. We are going to label it with the equation. So x squared plus 2x minus 8. And I want to know the domain and the range of this function. So for my domain, remember I'm looking for my x values, and my x's, they actually have no restrictions at all. So my domain is going to go from -infinity to infinity. Now my range, remember bottom to top. So my y's, my lowest y value that I have there is a -9. And then my highest value goes on to infinity with a parenthesis. Now from the graph, we're going to determine the following. So the first thing we're going to find is my vertex. Okay, so if I want to find my vertex, I look for this point right down here. Okay, so there's my vertex. And that vertex point I can also find on the table is -1, -9. I can also verify that by looking up here in my vertex form. In my vertex form, I also have my HK being -1, -9. Okay, I want to know, is this vertex a maximum or a minimum point? Well, since it's at the bottom, that's clearly a minimum point. Now, my axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry, remember, is the line, the vertical line that can be drawn straight through the vertex. And I want to know the equation of that line. So the equation of this line is x equals -1. X equals -1. Okay, next question is, what is the y-intercept? Okay, so again, look at the graph right here. I've got my y-intercept. My y-intercept is the point 0, -8. My roots, here and here, I find my roots are x equals -4 and x equals +2. And the next question says, over what interval is the domain a decreasing function? So I want to know, where is this graph going down? So it's going down kind of in this part of the graph, going down, 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 and then it stops. So that means that I'm going from -infinity and all the way to my -1. And since it stops right at -1, I'm going to put an open parenthesis because when it gets to -1, that's when it's going to stop moving. Okay? Most of the other questions on the homework, let's see if we want to push through a couple more here. You've got those. Those are great. I think you'll have good luck on the rest of this, and I hope that you have a great day. Thank you very much.